Well, looking closer to home, truck drivers have begun a campaign to try to stop the federal government from axing the new road safety watchdog. 330 people die every year in Australia in crashes that involve trucks. The Road Safety Remuneration Tribunal was established under Labor to address the issue of low pay and tight deadlines, which had been linked to truck crashes. Michael Ed is the Assistant State Secretary of the Transport Workers Union New South Wales and joins me now. Michael, now funding for the tribunal is currently being reviewed. Why is it so important to keep it?
Because it's literally about saving lives. It's about saving the lives of transport workers and members of the community. I mean, there are such extreme economic pressures on the transport industry that they lead directly to deaths and injuries on our roads. Unless you deal with those systemic causes, you're not going to reduce the shocking death toll and the shocking injury toll.
Can you talk us through exactly what is the tribunal's role as it stands?
At this stage, it can place orders right along the supply chain. That is, that it can say to the top of the supply chain that you need to look at how you're remunerating an owner-driver, for example, how you're implementing systems of work and whether they're safe or unsafe. So right now, the tribunal is looking at rates of pay for owner-drivers that help them do things such as recover their costs. So, for example, in a highly competitive price-taking industry, such as the transport industry, where you have an owner-driver who might be contracting to the top of the supply chain to a company like Coles, when fuel spikes or their costs spike, they need to have some capacity to recover their cost to operate safely. So right now the tribunal is dealing with that issue. I mean, it's a really crucial issue. I mean, Coles were in the tribunal saying, the logistics manager for Coles was in the tribunal saying that he had a KPI target as a very senior manager to reduce transport costs year on year by 5%. No reference to the cost that transport companies were facing. And if you think about that sort of economic pressure and what it can do in the transport industry by just slashing costs by 5%, even if there are rising costs in the industry, it's that sort of corporate negligence that can lead to deaths and injuries on our roads. And that's why the tribunal, one of the reasons why the tribunal has come into being.
And what happened, what was there before the tribunal?
There was some limited provisions. There's some health and safety laws. There's some measures before the Fair Work Commission, but it was really quite limited. And the nature of the tribunal is it can go to the top of a supply chain. So you can have a company like Coles that might subcontract to other major companies like Toll and Linfox, then be contracted out through a supply chain from there, or a number of the companies that come inbound into a distribution centre such as Coles. So the reality is that the top of the supply chain has the economic power and has the capacity to make a difference. And those sort of companies were not really caught up in occupational health and safety legislation and the industrial legislation. So that was one of the key reasons for the tribunal. I mean, it came about after decades of coronial inquests, after academic inquiries about reports commissioned by the Parliaments of Australia and by the Parliaments of New South Wales in particular. So there's mountains and mountains of academic evidence, of coronial inquest evidence that has led to the establishment of the tribunal. Now you have a situation where Coles has made donations to the Liberal Party of around $2 million, has been having one-on-one meetings with members of the Liberal Party. They're not making those donations for no reason. They're making those donations to see if the members of the Liberal Party are prepared to get blood on their hands to abolish a tribunal that's starting to do its work, to act in the interest of the community and to act in the interest of transport workers. So the government, the other government has to decide whether it lines up with the community or whether it's going to line up with a corporate citizen that is implementing a business model that is directly leading to deaths and injuries on our roads.
Has the Transport Workers Union expressed its concerns directly to the federal government?
We have. We've expressed our concerns to not only to the federal government but to all the members of the federal parliament, saying this tribunal needs to be left to do its work. Let it do its work and then appropriately review it after it's had an opportunity to do its work.
So what happens then if the Road Safety Remuneration Tribunal is abolished?
Well, for our members and for transport workers around the country, we'll continue to hold the likes of Coles accountable for the actions. We'll continue to fight on for safe roads for transport workers in the community. But the tribunal is a major legislative instrument that can lead to the saving of lives. It can lead to the reduction in the injury toll. It's a tribunal that should be left to do its work for the sake of transport workers and for the sake of the community.
Okay, Michael Aird, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Michael Aird there, the Assistant State Secretary of the Transport Workers Union, New South Wales.